Hey, what's going on? In this video, we're going to talk about something interesting. It's that you should stop setting goals if you'd rather solve problems, which sounds, again, a bit counterintuitive, but that's what I love. I love finding the indirect paths that are usually more productive or more conducive to the actual ends. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So stay tuned or sit tight. Here I am with my book. It's called How to Conquer Yourself. And last week I did a video training called Willpower is an Indirect Game, which is sort of explaining a small segment from the intro session of the book. And in that video, I then mentioned another book called Stop Setting Goals If You'd Rather Solve Problems by Bob Beal. So what does this mean? Bob Beal found that whenever he does training sessions in a corporate environment or what have you, he'll say to the group, all right, let's set some goals. And they'll go, all right, fine. We got to set some goals. Let's set some goals. But if he says to that same group, hey, I have this problem. Let's put our heads together and see how we can solve it. Then people get excited. Then people get into it and the wheels start turning intellectually. So you can think of this as what they refer to in NLP as away from versus towards motivation. Some people are motivated towards going to something good, whereas most people, 80%, are motivated to go away from something negative. And nothing is wrong with either side. So therefore, you should stop setting goals if you'd rather solve problems. It's difficult to make this distinction because all self-help theology, all like thinking, especially in the Western world, is about goal setting, which doesn't really help most people because that's not how they're fundamentally wired. So here's some examples of problem solving being the more conducive route. When it comes to finances, really it's because we don't control what we spend. When we have financial trouble, our first instinct is to think to make more. But if you study the work of, like, let's say Trent Ham at The Simple Dollar, or Thomas J. Stanley, who wrote The Millionaire Next Door, people who do well financially often begin by mitigating their expenses, which is the counterintuitive approach. When it comes to dating, I used to give dating advice, especially after I graduated college. And I found that a lot of guys, they think they need lines. They think they need to do something special or creative. When the reality is, if you kind of sit back and analyze your approach, analyze your lifestyle and what have you, you find that there's a lot of things that you're doing that are preventing you from success. Like, is your apartment organized? Do you groom yourself correctly, etc. In fact, in general, when people have trouble meeting someone, whether it's a man or a woman, when they have trouble meeting someone, often it's because they're not getting out enough. And it's like, how do you expect to meet someone new if you're not going out? You know what I mean? It's problem solving. In business and big, large-scale enterprises, they refer to their products or services as quote-unquote solutions, as in a solution to a problem. There are also what they call IT solutions or IT support desk, IT help desk. These people build their careers, build their businesses around solving problems. And that's how they reach their success. The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal is one of the better books I've found on willpower recently as in the last few years. And her book is based on why people lose self-control. Each chapter is dedicated to a reason why we lose willpower, and then describes with science and experiments and actual application, because she has a course that she teaches at Stanford, how to prevent you from experiencing that loss so that you maintain and sustain the energy that you would otherwise naturally have. So it's problem solving. Early on in the book, she mentioned something called the Donning-Kruger effect. This is also pretty interesting and related. It's that if you're too confident, if you're too optimistic, you can be overconfident and you won't prepare for the actual thing, for the actual goal. Whereas if you're a little bit worried or insecure, you do prepare. So like, let's say you're a student. If you're going to take a test and you're worried about it, you're going to study. If you're going to take a test and you're not worried about it, you're most likely like take the test and it's more than what you expected. Whereas if you had studied, it's less difficult than you had predicted. With smoking, drinking, what I call habit reformation, the people who think it's not a problem to quit, they're the ones who relapse because they keep themselves in the same environment. They keep themselves around the same people thinking, oh, well, I can quit whenever I want. And reality also, historically, if you study nations and history and what have you, and some people would project this onto America into the future, the nations that are overconfident are the ones who do not problem solve preemptively. Whereas if you're insecure, if you're a bit worried, if you have what they quote unquote refer to as negative thinking, that's what's going to lead you to do the planning and the preparedness that would prevent you from failing. It'll lead you to point up, so to speak. So lesson recap overview. Stop setting goals if you'd rather solve problems. Remember, 80% of people are actually the latter, even though our culture doesn't really discuss things from that vantage point. Really, it's about having both muscles. So you want to set goals, and then you want to problem solve preemptively to think about, like, okay, what are the problems I'm likely to have within that endeavor? Eben Pagan has a concept called inevitability thinking. So if you set a goal and then you say, okay, how can I make it inevitable that this goal is going to occur? Then your wheels really start turning. You'll start like setting up accountability partners, just doing a lot of interesting things to make it natural that the goal will be reached. Also, never act outside of your personality. Like, think about how you're wired and then focus on exploiting that strength, not mitigating your weakness. Because if you try to approach things as, well, let me like fix my character so I don't have this weakness anymore, then you're really just becoming a neutral. You're becoming an average. Whereas if you think about what your strengths are, then you're more likely like to shine because you accentuate that, and people won't notice your faults as much. So again, my concept is that willpower is an indirect game. When I talk about, stop setting goals if you'd rather solve problems, that's really a component. That's really a subset of a bigger, more encompassing idea that willpower is an indirect game. So you can see my last video for more on that. Again, you can email me anytime. You can also call me. I have an office line now. I like to talk to people. That way I get an idea of how my work comes across. And when I get the feedback of how people actually use it, then that refines the idea and makes it more practical. It makes it more thorough. It makes it more efficient. So give me a call or email me anytime for anything, really. You can go to my website, DoTheKnowledge.com, and get 2 free chapters of the book. That way you know how I think, you know how I teach, you know how I talk, you know how I write, and you know whether it works for you before you buy it. Also, there's a lot of videos there. There's other podcast audios of me breaking things down and what have you. It's on the right sidebar of the blog. So DoTheKnowledge.com, you look on the right, and right under my photo, you'll see the sign up form. Again, stop setting goals if you'd rather solve problems, and always work in ways that complement your personality and natural wiring rather than run counter or contradict them. Hope this helps, and have a great day.